Welcome to the DigiGods podcast. We are done with the American 4th of July holiday, and Mark is still not back because Mark is now on vacation. So I am here with Tim Cogshell.
Hello again, everybody.
Tim's going to be with us for a couple of weeks while we just tread water, while Mark is in Europe.
Living a much better life than us.
Well, you know, Mark shares a birthday. He shares it with the entire nation of France. And so I think he's going over there to just enjoy the fireworks on the 14th of July to pretend like they're celebrating his birthday with him.
Bastille Day?
Yeah,
Bastille Day?
Yeah, it's Bastille Day.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm smarter than I thought I was.
It's kind of obnoxious. We have a guest as well today. We have our good friend Nadim George, writer, director, producer. Who Nadim and I we were on the set of Love Sonia a few weeks ago, weren't we?
Yes.
Our good friend Tabrez Nourani's directing debut, and that was very fun.
We were at Griffith Park.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night.
At like 1 a.m.
There's a lot of things happening in Griffith Park in the middle of the night.
Yes, there are. And the directions that you gave me confused the daylights out of me because they had it all blocked off. It was like the gates were closed, and then I went through the wrong direction. I went around the way you're supposed to come out, so I drove in the exit, and then two park rangers who looked like they'd had a case of donuts too many. They came and tried to stop me with flashlights.
That was part of the movie.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Love Sonia the comedy.
Yes. Anyway, so very much looking forward to that. And Tim, what are you doing this weekend? You're covering Outfest.
I'm covering Outfest here in the United States of America. I feel like I have to say this for the show because it's an international show.
It is.
So
yeah.
Outfest is a big, gigantic gay and lesbian film festival. It's been going on 20, 25 years.
Something like that.
Something like that here. Really, really huge film festival. Very important film festival here. That highlights gay and lesbian films from around the world. So actually some of the films that I'll be seeing will be films that will be able to be seen all over the world. Lots of them.
Very nice.
Yeah. We got a lot of gay films here we're going to talk about.
We do, in honor of Outfest, we got a little stack of gay and lesbian themed films this week. We have a ton of classic films left over from before, but for starters, I want to get through some documentaries here really quickly, which we didn't get to previously with Mark. So I'm going to make some short work of some of these docs. There are 3 here, which are 4K documentaries, all kind of the same line. These are all from Shout Factory, and they are all 4K documentaries that just will kick your HDR into fifth gear. Rocky Mountain Express, Journey to Space, and Flight of the Butterflies. This is basically kind of IMAXing your new 4K television. Journey to Space is far and away the most interesting of these, although it's a little disjointed. You spend a lot of time in the International Space Station, and then there's a lot of kind of CGI global warming stuff. It doesn't really quite all hang together, but the space stuff is really nice.
The exterior space stuff. I remember I saw that film. We spend a lot of times floating inside the International Space, which is neat.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna make a movie like that, then get outside the space station. Ron Howard and Apollo 13 let us float around. Not that interesting. And
Rocky Mountain Express is just beautiful travel log of the Rockies, and Flight of the Butterflies. If you're really into butterflies, this is sort of like the what was the bird movie?
Which one?
Well, the Winged Migration.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's like that.
It's a little bit like that, except instead of following birds, you're following monarch butterflies, so it's a little less dynamic.
Yeah, I remember because in the other one, we were literally in that flock of birds.
Yeah, you're not really in with the. It's a little harder because you'll kill all the butterflies. But anyway, it's beautiful stuff. I mean, it's really really nice. So it's these were all originally IMAX films and 4K. Now you can, if you want to do that IMAX thing on your 4K television, really wow people. Knock yourselves out. It's it's not like these are stories or anything, but they are what they are. And then we've got some really, really interesting film-related docs here. Got a Blu-ray called Just Desserts Special Edition. This is from Synapse, and this is the making of Creepshow. Now, Creepshow was a bit of a cult movie once upon a time. It has kind of waned in its cult popularity. This doc was made in 2007. And if you remember Creepshow, if you have a fondness for Creepshow, it's a fun behind-the-scenes look at it with all kinds of great extras and interviews and flashback stuff. It's on Blu-ray, looks decent, but otherwise, it's if Creepshow means nothing to you, then it's obviously going to have no frame of reference whatsoever. Adjust Your Color is the truth of Petey Greene. This is a documentary about the legendary Petey Greene, narrated by Don Cheadle.
Well,
Tim?
Don, of course, I think, did Don direct that movie in which he plays Petey Greene?
He plays Petey Greene in the movie.
Did he direct it? Was that Cassie Lemons? That might have been Cassie Lemons.
I think it's Cassie Lemons.
Who directed that movie. That's a very good movie.
It is.
Chewie Ejiofor is in that movie.
Yep.
I actually happened to cover the junket and the red carpet for that movie back in the day. It's very, very interesting. Petey is a very interesting character.
Fascinating guy.
In the context of some of the things that are going on in the world today, vis-a-vis, African Americans, Petey is a very, very prescient sort of fellow. He was talking about a lot of this on the radio.
Yeah.
25, 30, 35
Petey
years
basically
ago.
changed radio.
Yeah.
He a legendary radio figure and a guy who, had no formal training in it. He just sort of walked into it from, he'd done some time and
almost off the street. What he did is he what Dave Chappelle called keeping it real.
Yeah.
That's what Petey started doing on the radio 35 years ago.
Well, Don Cheadle was great on screen, and obviously the right guy to narrate this. So this is a really, really fun doc as well. This is from Virgil Films. A couple here that go together. I'm going to mention the first one is Walter Salles, the tremendous Brazilian filmmaker, who is an Oscar nominee himself, did a documentary about the hotshot young Chinese director now, who is sort of all the rage right now, Jia Zhangke. The documentary is called Jia Zhangke, A Guy from Fengyang, and Jia has kind of taken the world by storm. He's now the new kind of the new hotshot art house Chinese director. And has done a number of really extraordinary films. Mainly Platform was the first one that was a big deal. Still Life, and then the one that really, really caught everybody's attention recently, A Touch of Sin in 2013, which is this devastating look at violence in Chinese society in a number of different episodic vignettes. It's really an incredible film.
Yeah, sort of interestingly sort of interconnected. And this violence sort of takes place in rural China as well as in the city.
Everywhere.
And it shows how the film is about how the violence is almost completely disconnected from anything. Anything can be happening, and the result, or at some moment in it, there will be some insane act of violence. It's very disturbing.
It's really disturbing, which is why it's shocking that the Chinese censors even allowed it to be made. So anyway, if you want to know who this guy is behind all this stuff, and I have not been a fan of all of his films. I think some of them, The World in 2004 was not my favorite film, but he really is iconoclastic and incredibly creative. And Walter Salles, a no slouch himself, makes a wonderful, wonderful documentary about this incredible filmmaker and how he's kind of turning things around on the world stage. And released in tandem with that is, of course, Jia Zhangke's new film called Mountains May Depart, which Kino has also released this week on Blu-ray, and it is like all of his other films. It is visually stunning. It is narratively compelling. It is thematically really gut-wrenching, and it's this massive epic that spans decades of Chinese society. And, how all of these events just transpire in the life of this family. It's really just a huge tapestry. And
you and I talked about that film on Film Week, I think, when it was out.
May have.
I'm almost sure that we did. It's an extraordinary film. It's the one that has that amazingly beautiful ending with him trying to...
Yes,
right? I'm trying not to ruin the film, but that's the one, right? Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, Jia Zhangke, a filmmaker to know. And then another Blu-ray here, Ray Harryhausen, Special Effects Titan. This is by Gilles Ponceau. A lot of people interviewed in this one. Guillermo del Toro, Peter Jackson, James Cameron, John Landis, Joe Dante, Steven Spielberg, Tim Burton, Terry Gilliam, just about everybody who's ever worked with Ray Harryhausen or admired him. And Harryhausen, of course, predates CGI, and a lot of his stop-motion work is still better than CGI. tons of outtakes of interviews, and there's an audio commentary with the filmmakers and some other fun stuff here. But otherwise, you're watching this basically for a lot of great clips of Ray Harryhausen stop motion stuff. And it's amazing. It's wonderful. And you develop an incredible appreciation for what he did with just stuff. Nadeem, you have any favorite Ray Harryhausen films? You grew up on them just like we did. Sinbad and the Journey and all that?
Yeah. I occasionally catch one on late night television and still sit there and watch the whole thing.
Yeah. They're captivating, right?
They are very.
I mean, the point that's often made in this thing is that sometimes the stop motion does things that CGI can't, because it really... CGI, we're aware that it's CGI and it was done in a computer. But stop motion, even though it looks a little fake relative to CGI, somehow it feels more real. It's tangible. It's like a three-dimensional object come to life.
Because it is, in fact,
Yeah.
right? 3 It's still there. It's still there. Our mind knows that those little things running around in Sinbad, Seventh Voyage, Sinbad's Story,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
with the skeletons
Right.
and the thing.
Yeah.
I can watch that all day. Give me that over anything that happened in that Gods of Egypt movie that came out of it, with the big CGI, this, that, and the other thing, everything.
Yeah.
Give me those skeletons
Any
in
day.
that Sinbad movie.
Well, I think you cross a line with CGI, because CGI is attempting to make it as real as possible.
Yeah.
With stop motion and some other not computer generated stuff,
Yeah.
it's not
Exactly.
attempting to be real.
Yep.
So you go for that ride. You
Yeah.
accept it
Yeah.
for what it is, and that's what then. It's more the narrative than the special effects that are making the movie
for
what
sure.
it is.
Yep, absolutely. We are on board. Next one, another cool behind the scenes deal. You probably heard about this lately. Elstree, 1976, a film by John Spira. And you might wonder, what was going on at Elstree Studios in the UK in 1976? Star Wars, that's what was going on. And this is all compiled from footage that was shot during the production of Star Wars the year before it became the biggest film in history, when nobody really knew that this was even going to happen. And it's actually a really kind of a great flashback in time. It's a lot of fun. Nobody really knew what they were a part of, and that's what makes it fun. If this were like behind the scenes of The Empire Strikes Back, everybody would be kind of have a little swagger, a little attitude, like, yeah, it's a sequel to the biggest movie ever. But nobody here really knows what's going on. They're just putting on funny costumes, and they're at Elstree Studios, and there's aliens and makeup, and who knows? It's the 1970s. It might be Logan's Run. Who knows what it'll be? It's actually fun flashback. So that is Elstree 1976. Speaking of docs about filmmakers, this is superb. This is another one from Kino Lorber. This film is from Samba Gajigo and Jason Silverman. It is called Sembene, the inspiring story of the father of African cinema, which is an absolute must-see. African cinema does not get enough attention, but Ousmane Sembene, who is the Senegalese filmmaker, basically self-taught, who invented modern African film, and the entire ethnographic approach to so many different cultures in Africa and many different countries. It is really an incredible story. This is a guy with no formal education who became a legendary, internationally renowned, and incredibly influential filmmaker. Really, really worth your time. Definitely worth checking out. Has a bunch of great bonus features in here. Interviews and little backstory things. Really, really good stuff. And then while we're on the subject of non-American, non-Western filmmakers, we should mention that there was also the very sad passing in recent weeks.
Abbas Kiarostami.
Abbas Kiarostami, the first great director of the Iranian New Wave, and the first to depart. This documentary that I have in front of me here, Stardust Stricken from Facets, is about another one of the giants, Mohsen Makhmalbaf, a portrait of Mohsen Makhmalbaf. This is by Hushang Golmakani. And the story of Mohsen Makhmalbaf is interesting because he formed a Makhmalbaf house, which is for his family. His entire family, they're all filmmakers. His daughter has won awards as well. His wife's a filmmaker. It's an extraordinary family, and this just gives you a glimpse inside the incredible Makhmalbaf legacy. and what makes his style and his particular films so remarkable, and why he and the Iranian New Wave are worth paying attention to. And then the last couple of docs here. No Home Movie, Chantal Akerman, another one who recently passed away. This is her final film, and this is from Icarus Home Video. It is basically a look at at her relationship with her own mother, who was a Holocaust survivor and who has actually appeared in many of her movies. And it is quite true to the title. It is no home movie. It is not like any other home movie you've ever seen. It is personal, and it is gut-wrenching, it is powerful, and it is deeply heartfelt, and it's quite a film to go out with. Chantal Akerman took her own life, and you can tell there's a lot of baggage in that family. So, and then last one here, Song of Lahore, which I absolutely loved. Did either of you see Song of Lahore?
I did. Those Pakistani
musicians. It's the Pakistani Buena Vista
it's
Social Club.
Is it Wynton Marsalis? Is it Wynton or Branford?
It's Wynton.
It's Wynton Marsalis.
Yeah, Wynton.
Exquisite sequence in that film. All of these Pakistani musicians gathered there with Wynton Marsalis and all these sort of Western musicians. Now, these people don't speak English. And obviously, Wynton doesn't speak, what is it, Urdu?
Urdu.
But you know what he says to all of these musicians? Just get in the groove, baby. Just get in the groove.
Yeah.
And you know what they do?
They do.
They got right in that groove. It's musicians, man. Yeah. It's a language all by itself.
And it's essentially a form of music that they play, which is almost obsolete in Pakistan. It used to be the music that they would score to movies, But everything's changed there. And Western, there's a political issue in Pakistan where a more conservative government came in at a certain point. And suddenly there were no more Pakistani movies, and these guys were all out of work. And they're now trying to preserve their heritage and their musical tradition. And it's beautiful when they come to America. It's basically just like the Buena Vista Social Club trajectory. So it
ends up in a concert at Lincoln Center.
It's fantastic. It's beautiful. That is Song of Lahore. So those are our docs this week. Tim, you got anything there on the Outfest front?
Well, yeah, I do have several interesting little movies here. As I said at the beginning of the show, I'll be attending and doing a couple of panels at Outfest here, Big Gay and Lesbian Film Festival. Several of the films that we have here were once films that showed at Outfest.
Yeah.
Which I think is rather interesting in and of itself. One we have here. I'll let you say the name of the director, Wade.
Yes, Tali Shalom Ezer.
Wonderful little movie.
I hope I didn't.
Well, that's the reason why I let you do it. It's a neat little movie in any case.
Androgyny.
Is the thing with that one. These young women. It's a very seductive movie. These young lesbian girls, just filling out the fact that they are in fact gay and becoming gay. Special feature: the making of Princess. The name of the film is Princess. It's in Hebrew with subtitles. That's a pretty neat movie right there. We have a film called Those People. This would be one of the films, which was in fact an Outfest winner a year or two ago. Again, a very powerful film about that particular subject. This one was about a young Manhattan painter, an Upper East Side painter, who meets this other younger guy, and they're figuring out that they're gay. And it's a very interesting sort of storyline there. Like Cattle Towards the Glow, which is an absolutely beautiful title. Like Cattle Towards the Glow, 2015 film. Directors Dennis Cooper and Zach Farley. This was also a film that was featured at Outfest about a year or so ago. So it's an interesting.
Outfest is a great launching pad for a lot of these.
Look, the thing about these films and a lot of the films that come out of Outfest is that we talked about this a little earlier, Wade, they are of a thematic kind.
Yeah.
Very often they are, in fact, about the sort of either coming out or the dealing with inside of the family of the fact that someone has revealed that they are gay. If they're not about that, they're usually about a young gay man. I have another one in my hand here, Henry Gamble's Birthday Party, which was a very popular film. Another film that spent some time at Outfest. This came out about 2011 or so. I remember Roger Ebert liking this film quite a lot, so it was before he died, I know that for sure. Same sort of thing about a young man coming out, figuring out that he's gay, and revealing that to his social group as well as his family. Again, these films are of a theme. We have Hunter, same sort of thing. going on here, set in the sort of millennial generation, which I think is interesting. Sort of contemporary, very young gay men,
where the issues are, the social issues, the social taboos are probably not the same,
and because they're dealing with the fact of their gayness in a world 35 years on from HIV, and the cocktails, and some of the things that were issues, for the generation before them, are not issues for them, except that they are still issues for them. But they don't necessarily want to accept that they're issues for them. So it's an interesting look at the way that they're dealing with the world there. Outings was a television series that lasted for a season or two. Very funny Canadian television series. Saw this one, 2 or 3 episodes of this. Outrageous, very flamboyant gay men living their lives. They're very sort of
Canadian.
It was a sort of a queer as folks kind of.
Yeah.
Remember queer as folks? It's sort of in that vibe. And lastly, we have a film called Carla,
which Carl with A in the
Carl with the A in parentheses.
Carl.
Yeah, obviously, it's about a transvestite brother or sister. Yeah. Maybe it's a sister. I think it's a sister. Sister, right? I get confused about these things. Anyway, I love the tagline for this film. Sometimes love gets lost in the transition.
Oh, there you go.
That's clever.
That's a smart one.
That's a reason to make the whole damn movie, right there. Anyway, some interesting gay and lesbian themed films on the eve of Outfest, and only a few weeks or so after Gay Pride Month here in the United States.
Indeed.
Is that a thing around the world, Gay Pride?
I guess so, or maybe it's just the U.S.
It should be. You guys should celebrate that. The parties are fantastic.
Now, Nadim, I want to ask you, Sembene, when you were you grew up all over Africa, was Sembene a figure at that time? Was he a known fixture?
Not for me, because I was very young in Liberia, which is close to Senegal.
Yeah.
But didn't have any dealings at that point, and then moved to East Africa, and so no. And growing up there at the time when there were very few movie theaters or even television, we occupied ourselves doing other things.
See, that's what I always find interesting, because for the longest time, the Chinese filmmakers and the Iranian filmmakers who were getting so praised at international festivals weren't really known in their own countries. Like Tiang Zhuang from the Chinese Fifth Generation, a colleague of Zhang Yimou's, was really nobody in China knew who he was because his films were all banned.
Well, we talked about Abbas.
Kiarostami.
Just a few minutes ago. Now it's funny, he dies, and suddenly the Persian, the Iranian government, anyway, let's say the government,
they kind of claim him.
Oh, they're praising him. I'm like, you hated him.
They chased him to Paris.
He lives in France.
They drove him to make movies in France and Tokyo and Chinese. And I'm like, you people are so incredibly hypocritical.
So let's hit some new movies before we dive into the giant pile of classic stuff. Tim, it is Fate, By the Sea. We cannot stop talking about this movie.
You and I are probably one of the only couple of film critics who first of all, really understood this movie.
Well, it was funny. We were on Film Week. We covered this on Film Week together, and it was hilarious because before the show, and I'm trying to remember, get me right, you said that this was an
Antonioni film wrapped in
De Sica
film. Yeah.
And I said it was a Lelouch film wrapped in an Antonioni film.
Which is correct, no matter how you cut it.
Which is so nerdy and inside.
Look, this is a good movie, for one thing. Angelina Jolie directing. Her second film, I think. Her second film.
Or third film.
Actually,
third film, yeah.
Yes, right, because she did the Croatian thing.
That's right.
The big movie with the war guy, the guy in World War II.
Thing.
With her and Brad Pitt in this movie. It's a throwback. And I'm sorry, it's a very sophisticated piece of work. She's illustrating her own savviness. Sometimes she's playing Monica Vitti. Sometimes she's doing Sophia Loren. And I mean, she's doing them.
Yeah, exactly.
In these moments. I'm looking at this movie and I'm like, she's doing Monica Vitti from Love and Daughter. And she's just killing it. With the hat and everything, And I'm like, you know what? This is a very sophisticated woman. She's also incredibly brave, all right? We understand that Angelina had... what do they call it? Mastectomy?
Double mastectomy.
It's a very complicated situation that happened a few years ago. She does a full nude topless scene in this movie.
Brave.
Post reconstruction, obviously.
Yeah.
Or not obviously, depending on the way you want to look at it. But no matter how you look at it, that's brave, and I think that's her saying to the world,
Yeah.
You don't have to be afraid of this.
Be fearless.
Be fearless. It's just so very, very brave, very savvy.
I mean, the movie takes place in the 1970s, but it has basically Brad Pitt's a writer, Angelina Jolie's his wife, and they are in Malta at this resort trying to work out all of their issues. And it really feels like all of those 60s movies, right, from France and Italy and everywhere else in the Mediterranean, where people are just, they're in the sun-baked beauty of the Mediterranean and they're wrestling with issues, and you watch it if you're an American and you just think, you're in a beautiful place. Why can you not just get past all that and enjoy it? But, they can't enjoy the sunshine because they've got angst in their souls. I really thoroughly enjoyed the film. I understand why a lot of people really unleashed on it, but this is a gorgeous Blu-ray with ultraviolet on it from Universal, and I think it's worth taking a chance on.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Particularly if you like those, Italian realist, neo-realist films in the first place.
Next one, I Saw the Light, Hank Williams movie with Tom Hiddleston, who I believe is now the new Mr.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, the new Mr. Taylor Swift.
Yeah, they kind of look alike, actually.
Yeah, well,
I saw that movie too. I Saw the Light.
I'm afraid he thinks he is Hank Williams.
The soundtrack isn't by Calvin Harris, is it?
He's singing in that movie.
Well,
that movie opens very nicely. That movie opens. Did you see the opening of that movie?
I did. You tell me your thoughts.
Look, this movie opened beautifully. This movie opens with a shot. Tom Hiddleston playing Hank Williams in the round. He's singing in concert. He's key lit. Camera floats around him slowly as he sings that beautiful classic Hank Williams song. He's singing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. The moment that scene ends, this film becomes completely inert.
It does.
It's like this beautiful thing that captivated me, and then this movie just shrugged to a complete stop. And it's difficult to say why. It's not like there's bad acting. There's no bad acting in this film. These people are all talented. But this film came to a complete stop, and it did not start again.
Written, directed by Mark Abraham, who I think is a better director than a writer. I would say the script is kind of more the issue here. This is very interesting. Sony has released this essentially region-free. This will play on Blu-ray players in regions A, B, and C. So they're not really worried about anybody pirating this thing or anything, which I thought was very interesting. And, this was originally supposed to be released end of last year. It premiered at the Toronto Film Festival, and they obviously had hopes. Tom Hiddleston, he's on his way up. He's going to get an Oscar nomination. And then nobody liked it at Toronto, and they bumped the release date into 2016, and it just kind of lay there for a few weeks. It's too bad. It's not a horrible film. It's not a complete dud. It's worth watching for him because he is good. Elizabeth Olsen is fine, not quite well used in it. But it's no walk the line.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
Tim, did you see Eddie the Eagle?
Yeah, I did see Eddie the Eagle.
Well, we got a 4K Ultra HD version of it here. Does it warrant being on 4K?
Look,
That's the question.
Look,
Nadeem has a thought.
Eddie the Eagle, Cool Runnings, even the Muhammad Ali film.
Yeah.
These are films that they say, it's larger than life. These particular films are life is larger than film.
Yeah.
If you lived any of these, whether it's the Cool Runnings or Eddie the Eagle, the films can't match
That's true.
the drama of the real life.
That's really true.
And that's my problem with it. I loved Eddie the Eagle when it was happening. I followed it. It was a wonderful story, but just the film can't live up to life.
Yeah, and that's part of the issue here is Taron Egerton, who stars as Eddie the Eagle here with Hugh Jackman as his mentor coach. Taron Egerton is a really good-looking guy. Okay, he was in Kingsman. Yeah. Right. I mean, he's the kid in Kingsman. He's that blokey kid who becomes Colin Firth's protege, and then he's wearing the outfit, and he's a stud, and he's amazing. The real Eddie the Eagle. Do we remember what he looked like?
Oh yes.
Okay, he looked like Austin Powers, bastard stepchild. he was a weird looking guy with bad teeth and a weird voice and cross eyes and the glasses, and that's why we rooted for him. And you take Taron Egerton, and you can make him look as weird as you want, but he's still a movie star. He still looks more like Tom Cruise than he looks like the real Eddie the Eagle.
Well, that's the sort of odd dichotomy of Hollywood. Yeah. That's a Hollywood movie.
It's a Hollywood movie.
And that's the odd dichotomy of Hollywood.
It's more of a Hugh Jackman film, frankly. I mean, Hugh Jackman's more worthwhile. Anyway. But so anyway, is it really worth the 4K? I guess if you're looking for things to throw on the 4K just to show off 4K, sure, you could do worse, but I wouldn't buy it. And then we got 3 more here. The Boss. Did either of you see The Boss?
Yeah, which one is that now? Oh no, that's the Melissa McCarthy that I have not seen.
Oh,
I'm telling you, I'm off of Miss McCarthy. I'm sorry, I'm off.
Well, here's the thing. Her husband directed this, and they were together in Bridesmaids, right? Yeah. They had their little thing. He's the guy on the plane and the whole thing. And then he directed her in Tammy, and they write these things together. The movies that they do together are always problematic.
The weakest ones.
They're always the weakest ones because they're always based on characters that she did in sketches when they met at the Groundlings, right? They were part of the Groundlings together, and it's always this overinflated sketch comedy stuff, and it just gets so tiresome. And the idea of The Boss is rather silly. It's one of those rags to riches to rags to back to riches again things. She plays a troubled foster child who becomes the wealthiest woman in America, or the third wealthiest, whatever it is, and then she loses it all through an insider trading thing, and then she's got to move in with the young woman who used to work for her, played by Kristen Bell, and then she's got to learn her life lessons, and then she helps the Girl Scouts develop business acumen, and she's got to work her way up. And the Girl Scouts, of course, learn to be really ruthless. And there's a Girl Scout fight scene, like a street fight scene with Girl Scouts in slow motion. It's all really, really tedious.
You know what's really problematic about these movies now?
Yeah.
And I think it has something to do with generations, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these people grew up watching the same movies you and I grew up watching from the 80s. And I love movies like Baby Boom, The Associate.
Sure.
Half a dozen movies that are basically this theme, right?
Uh-huh.
Except that they insinuate their generation sort of potty humor, foul mouth.
Yeah.
Baby Boom, you get through the entire, any of those movies in the 80s, so like mid-80s movies, you can get through any one of those movies without one toilet joke, one potty joke, any sort of foul mouth, anything. Those movies are still perfectly funny, and they work to this day. These people don't get that. They think they have to go down that blue road in order to get the jokes.
And this one gets really nasty in places. Anyway, alternate ending, deleted scenes, all the usual stuff in here, some exclusive Blu-ray featurettes. The one thing I will say about this is, I can't watch this without thinking this is a movie that Bette Midler passed on in 1985. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It feels like a movie Bette Midler would have made. But it would have been better.
Or a Roseanne Barr movie from 1985.
Or like 89.
Yeah.
Everybody wants some. Richard Linklater's first film since Boyhood.
Yeah.
Is it good?
Dude, very good. This movie opens with that young man. I think it's 1980.
Yeah,
it's when this movie is set. He's in a light blue Oldsmobile 442, like a 1974 Oldsmobile 442, and he's listening to Leonard Skinner. I don't know what it is. The soundtrack of this movie is worth the ticket alone. Buy the movie, put it in, leave the room.
Effectively a sequel to Dazed and Confused in many respects.
Young baseball players, young guys on for their first year on a college baseball team, all this kind of stuff. Very, very reminiscent. This all resonates with me because all of Richard Linklater, all of these guys, they're exactly my age at that time. They're all 19, 20, 21 in 1979, 80, 81. So I'm listening to this soundtrack, and I'm watching these cars, and I'm looking at these guys, and I'm seeing my entire life in 1978. But you got to kind of have lived there a little bit to get it.
Well, it's very thin on the extras, just usual EPK type stuff, but it does come with ultraviolet, so you can add it to your ultraviolet library and knock it out of the park. And then lastly here, Green Room, which much to the chagrin of anybody who has seen the movie, and some of our listeners pointed this out when the artwork, the cover artwork was released on the, they talked about this on the Facebook page, the cover art actually gives gives the movie away. So ignore the cover art if you're going to watch the movie, just don't really pay attention to it. I will say it's not quite the jolt, the gut-wrenching shock thriller that I had hoped it would be. But in hindsight, the fact that we no longer have Anton Yelchin with us really gives this film it casts a pall over it. So one of his last films, I think he had a couple other films in the can. Obviously, one of them, Star Trek, the forthcoming Star Trek film. But this certainly is one of his last films. So there is a reason to watch this. Patrick Stewart is very good in it. Imogen Poots, I've been a fan of since day one. But for Anton Yelchin, Green Room is probably worth watching. This is Blu-ray again with Ultraviolet as well. So now, gentlemen, we are going to dive into some library and classic films for the remainder of the show.
Excellent.
All right. So first up, we've got a bunch of DVD-R, manufacturer-on-demand stuff here. The one you probably shouldn't spend too much time on. Look, I love the people at Warner Archive, but the old Charlie Chan movies, there is so little to recommend them to anybody who isn't a diehard Charlie Chan fan. These are just generally not very good movies. Two of them have Roland Winters playing Charlie Chan. The other one has Sidney Toler as Charlie Chan. And really, the filmmaking is just marginal. These things were cranked out. And as you probably notice, neither of the actors playing Charlie Chan are actually Asian, which was an issue at the time. People shouldn't assume that Charlie Chan movies was just a different age and people didn't mind if white actors played Asian. No, they did. They really did. And the Asian community was not thrilled about this. And it was an issue at the time. Yellowface has always been an issue. So from a historic standpoint, I guess these films have a certain interesting quality to them. But anyway, that's the Charlie Chan 3-film collection from Warner Archive. Includes the movies The Red Dragon, The Feathered Serpent, and The Sky Dragon. I also don't think Charlie Chan movies are very interesting as far as being mysteries and detective work. Freddie Bartholomew and Mickey Rooney in Lord Jeff. This was an old MGM film that is now part of the Warner Library. It's part of the Warner Archive collection. Essentially a programmer at the time. Just Freddie Bartholomew had just made Captain's Courageous, and Mickey Rooney was, of course, Mickey Rooney. He's always been Mickey Rooney. I always think of Dana Carvey doing Mickey Rooney on an old Mickey Rooney and who's the biggest star in the world. If you've ever had any exposure to Mickey Rooney, I was a PA on a Mickey Rooney movie once.
Oh, get out of here! Really?
Yeah, it was the LA unit of what was the movie Legend of Wolf Mountain.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, good grief!
I know Mickey. There was Johnny Grant. He's one of the Hollywood. I don't know what it was. It was some event. And Johnny Grant and Mickey Rooney was there. Mickey only died, 5, 6, 7 years ago? Not that long ago.
Yeah, not long ago. No,
he was there, and he was 900 years old. And that lovely lady who was this 14th wife or whatever it was was there. It was this very odd thing. Yeah. Well, anyway, Legend of Wolf Mountain. I remember that very, very well. I never got paid. They still owe me $250. Oh, they owe you way more than that, brother. They do now. The DP actually had to take him to court. I remember that. The LA unit DP. He didn't get paid either, and he took him to court. Now, I remember thinking, $250, I guess I could take you to court too, but... Yeah, it makes a better story. It makes a better story. Anyway, one of these days, something will happen. Anyway. That is Lord Jeff, Freddie Bartholomew, and Mickey Rooney. And then we got another one with Mickey Rooney with Wallace Beery, another figure from the era, a solid Wallace Beery guy, whose name I always remember from Barton Fink. Remember? Wallace Beery wrestling movie. It's a Wallace Beery picture. This is called Stable Mates. And I love the tagline on this. It's so classic from the MGM era. Thrills, heartthrobs, roaring laughter. So great. I love the marketing. Wallace Beery plays this alcoholic vet, and Mickey Rooney is a young kid who just loves horses, and you can fill in the rest. It's one of those horse movies that were so big in the 30s and 40s. Because Mickey Rooney made a great jockey. Yeah. Because he was 2 feet tall. Yeah. Black Beauty and American Velvet and Elizabeth Taylor. My Friend Flicka. What was it about horse movies back then? Horses. Yeah.
America still so rural that everybody was into horses?
You know what? You might have just hit on something. There you go. There you go.
I'm a little out of this conversation. I've been growing up in Africa. I was chasing wildebeest while you guys were watching classic movies.
And then from the 20th Century Fox Cinema Archives, Lauren Bacall and Robert Stack in The Gift of Love, which was an early CinemaScope classic, nice Technicolor CinemaScope production. Not a lot by as a movie. Jean Nicolesco directed this. It's okay. Not brilliant. Just a kind of a generic family melodrama. A woman who has a very short period of time to live. And then another wonderful CinemaScope film, a little bit better, Prince of Players, which has really no great stars in it other than Richard Burton. Young Richard Burton, along with Maggie McNamara and Raymond Massey, who'd long since expired. He used up his shelf life. Elizabeth Sellers. The one that kind of jumped out at me was John Derek, young John Derek, before he became before he was
bowed, before he got bowed.
Yeah, and before he was Joshua in the Ten Commandments.
Indeed,
and I would assume this was probably shortly after he was my father's student. Which is funny because I remember growing up on the Ten Commandments, and every time it would show up and they'd cut to, I don't know if you remember this, but DeMille never really outgrew. By the way, it's an okay film. It's better than the other one, but the thing about John Derek, and I'm going to tell this story, and I'm sure I've told it before, but when I grew up, and DeMille never really outgrew his silent phase. So he would still make his movies in a really kind of a cheesy silent era way. So in the Ten Commandments, most of which is shot on sound stages, very obviously. Then during the Exodus, you have the Exodus taking place with all of this, photography out here in the desert somewhere near Lancaster, California. And they shot without sound, and it's a lot of voiceover and swooning music. And then you'll have these insert shots that were clearly shot on a sound stage. And it just doesn't match at all. These people walking around near Death Valley in the desert, and then you'll have a soundstage shot against a process background of John Derek saying "stonecutters to the left, water-bearing women to the right," and it just looked horrible. And I always remember sitting next to my father, and that would come on, and every time that John Derek shot would come up, it would just be face palm. And I never quite understood that because I'm a kid. I'm loving every bit of it. I don't realize it, and eventually I realized that is the grief of a teacher realizing he learned nothing.
Yeah, the kid just wasn't listening.
He learned nothing. Anyway, all right. Let's.
That's why I became a mediocre director instead.
Yeah. Well, he wouldn't have been a director if he weren't married to Bo Derek.
Yeah.
So there it is. Let's move into I got a pile of Kino Lorber titles here that I should go through fairly quickly before we get to some of the goody stuff, the Criterion and whatnot. These are all from Kino Lorber's licensing deal with 20th and MGM and a few other companies. These are part of the Kino Lorber Studio Classics line. And these are all movies, basically, to sum up what this line is. Kino, quite wisely and very smartly, said, the studios, a lot of these, they're doing the same thing that Twilight Time and Olive are doing, that they said, a lot of the studios are doing nothing with their catalogs, and people want Blu-rays of classic movies, so damn it, we're going to go out there and give it to them. So here is your list of amazing Kino classics for this week, and some of them are really, really great. The Oxbow Incident with Henry Fonda. Amazing. Dana Andrews, Anthony Quinn, directed by William Wellman, who of course did the amazing All Quiet on the Western Front early on in the 1930s. This is a terrific Western. Great Western. Absolutely fantastic. Audio commentary by Dick Ullane and William Wellman Jr., son of the director, who will tell you all about why this movie is just such a great blast of Western testosterone. It is fantastic, The Oxbow Incident. Invisible Invaders. This is a kind of a cult sci-fi flying saucer invasion, body snatchery, quasi-zombie cult film that is actually an awful lot of fun to watch. It's better than most of them from the era, 1959.
John Agar, right?
Yep, sure is. John Agar and Gene Byron and a bunch of other, John Carradine and later on in his career. This is actually an awful lot of fun. It is definitely one of those Cold War paranoia movies. Everything about the atomic age and fear of the Russians and fear of aliens. It's a lot of fun. Edmund O'Brien, another one of those gritty, tough guys who did a lot of noirs. Shield for Murder. The only thing I can tell you about this is it has probably the greatest tagline of any movie like this I've ever seen. Tim, read the tagline.
Dame hungry, killer cop runs berserk.
That's what the movie is.
That kind of speaks to what we were talking about earlier with the way you want to hook people right there.
Dame hungry, killer cop runs berserk. That's just it's a beautiful thing. You just can't do marketing like that anymore. John Payne, an actor that I've always liked an awful lot, in an Andre de Toth film, Hidden Fear, good solid noir from 1957. John Payne, of course, most famous for Miracle on 34th Street, where he played a really good guy. He's a little rougher here. And Andre de Toth, famous. He had the eye patch, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he needed it. I think that was just what you did when you were a director in the 1950s, right? You put on an eye patch and you made people think you were a pirate or something.
Some of them put on 2 eye patches.
Right. John Payne also shows up in this interesting Phil Carlson-directed film from 1953 that has been newly remastered and features a great audio commentary from film historian Eddie Muller. It is called 99 River Street. John Payne along with Evelyn Keyes. And, it's basically a film noir in the classic film noir style. It's one of the minor noir of the era, but if you've seen Kansas City Confidential, same director, Phil Carlson, no slouch. He never really kind of made it to the top tier of noir directors, but he did do films like Kansas City Confidential, and this is maybe just a tiny notch below. And then the last two. My goodness, this is a weird, strangely terrible, and yet oddly compelling film. Anthony Schaefer's Absolution, starring Richard Burton from 1978, when Richard Burton was making nothing but compellingly horrible movies. Burton at this point, pretty much, he was just phoning it in, kind of like Brando at the same point in his career. And Anthony Schaefer directs this, not terribly well, but gosh, this is just one of those movies that is just Burton as a priest, and it's a mystery, and it's somehow a really bad overwrought drama, and it just it never really comes together. But you just can't take your eyes off Richard Burton. You just don't know what he's doing in this movie. And then lastly, from this Kino Lorber line is the 42nd anniversary edition. They couldn't do this 2 years ago.
Wow.
Make it the 40th. The 42nd anniversary edition of the Taking of Pelham 123, film which was at least one of a handful of movies that inspired Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
And it's still great. The remake of it, I can't say I liked an awful lot. In the remake, it looked like Denzel was working his ass off, and Travolta was collecting a paycheck.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, Tony Scott.
Yeah.
The late Tony Scott.
It just...
Yeah.
But it's exactly what it felt like. It's just like, wow, man, sometimes casting will ruin a movie if you can't get actors on the same page. Joe Sargent directed the original. It is still classic. It is still priceless. Walter Matthau, Robert Shaw, Martin Balsam, Hector Elizondo. Fantastic movie, 1974. Can improve. You just cannot improve on this. A great score from the era by David Shire. Really just a terrific movie. This comes just loaded with extras. An interview with David Shire, an interview with Hector Elizondo, who basically now just does Gary Marshall movies.
Yeah.
Interview with the editor, an audio commentary with Pat Healy, who is obviously an actor from the era as well. Film programmer Jim Healy, and then an animated montage of stills and posters. It's a lot of fun stuff. All right, on the Criterion front, Tim, what do we got?
Well, you gave me a really, really great one here. You gave me Easy Rider. Dennis Hopper's film. Interesting. We think about Easy Rider, and because of the way it's made in a sort of very naturalistic way, that cinematography from Laszlo Kovacs, we think of it as this independent film. The subject matter, Dennis Hopper, Peter Fonda, these guys sort of writing the way they made it. They sort of wandered around the country, through the desert Southwest and down to New Orleans and all of that. Easy Rider is a studio film.
Columbia.
Imagine trying to make this film today. The way they gave them less than $1 million. Go make a movie. You're riding around. They're stoned out of their minds most of the time. Most of the stuff that you see in this film, that crazy psychedelic scene out in the desert with all they're stoned out of their minds, use most of the budget just buying drugs and. Yet they make this classic piece of cinema here, shot beautifully by Laszlo. All those beautiful lens flares, which is a thing that he sort of pioneers. This is a fantastic Blu-ray, restored high definition digital transfer, supervised by Laszlo. Master audio to 2.1, 5.1 stereo surround. Look, Dennis Hopper. People forget that his first film, Nicholas Ray's the Rebel Without a Cause.
Yeah.
I think he was 18, 19 years
Something
old.
like that.
Nicholas Ray's third or so film that he had made. He had made They Live by Night, I think, before. And you're pioneering director Nicholas Ray.
Yeah.
The first helicopter shot in the film, all that. Dennis Hopper was lifelong films with Nicholas Ray. Helped him out in his later career much later. You can see the influence of Nicholas Ray.
That's
in this
fascinating.
movie.
Yeah.
Nicholas Ray was another one that started wearing that eye patch later in his career. But you can see the influence of Nicholas Ray in this film, Easy Rider. I think it's quite fascinating.
Well, that is Easy Rider getting the Criterion treatment, which is long overdue. So rock on with that. You know what else gets the Criterion Blu-ray treatment this week? Carnival of Souls, which is a central part of the documentary that I will always and forever plug on this show, Schlock, The Secret History of American Movies, that I made with Ray Green over a decade ago. Carnival of Souls is a really pivotal exploitation film because Herc Harvey, who directed it, basically was just doing industrials. This is a guy who was out in the middle of the Midwest. He had no exposure to Hollywood. And this basically was a bet. He made a bet with somebody and made this movie as a result of the bet, shot it all over, Nevada, Utah, and some other desolate places. And it's essentially about a woman, a church organist, who survives an accident and then gets a new job as a church organist in an adjacent city and is haunted by ghosts because she should have died, and they are trying to pull her back. And Harvey himself has a cameo as the ghost who is who spins around in the chair when she's in the office in this one scene, which still makes my skin crawl talking about it. I just love this movie. It is so beautiful. The soundtrack is so bizarre and creepy. And this was made in 1962, same year as Lawrence of Arabia and a lot of other fine films. It was a complete exploitation film. It went completely below the radar and then captured everybody's attention in subsequent years. It is loaded with extras, including a documentary of the 1989 reunion of the cast and crew, and a thing called the Carnival Tour, which is a 2000 update on the film's locations, and tons and tons and tons of other really good stuff. An audio commentary with Harvey and John Clifford, who co-wrote it, and Dana Gould, great comic, who also shows up interviewed and gives you his two bits on why it's terrific. It's just great. Love this movie. Carnival of Souls, director-approved edition on Blu-ray.
And you gave me over here the In-Laws,
the original
In-Laws. I kind of like that other one. I had to be honest with you, but this stands apart.
It does.
This is a 1979 movie for one thing. And I will say this about it: for a 1979 movie, it sort of exists because this feels a little bit out of time and space. This movie feels like a movie from the late 60s, late 70s. It's insanely funny. Arthur Hiller film. Written by Andrew Bergman, who went on to become quite a director himself.
Yeah.
The Honeymoon in Vegas, I think.
Such a funny movie.
But here, Peter Falk, Alan Arkin, both at the top of their game.
Yeah.
So funny, so iconically themselves in this movie. 1979, a couple of fathers-in-law. What they are? They're getting married. One's the father of the groom, the other one's the father of the bride. One of them is a twitchy nutbag, and the other one's sort of conservative, and it's absolutely hysterical film. On this Criterion, again, all kinds of 2K digital transfer, audio commentary track from the director Arthur Hiller, and Alan Arkin and Peter Falk. We lost Peter Falk a couple of years ago, I guess, right? Alan's still around doing some absolutely hysterical stuff. Nancy DeSalt. Really, really fantastic movie that I'll admit I haven't seen this movie in several years. I wonder if it still plays as wonderfully as it did.
It does, and I'll say the thing that is especially sad to me is the amazing supporting performance by Richard Libertini as the South American dictator with the who does the little, the talking hand thing, the Senor Wences deal. Richard Libertini, very, very dear friend of mine. I grew up with his son, who, we were childhood buddies, still are. And, Richard was a part of my childhood growing up, seeing him in movies and talking to him afterwards about them. And, an incredibly huge personality, a wonderful man. One of the great character actors of his generation, and we lost him just a few months ago as well. Yeah. So just at the beginning of the year, and so seeing this really reminds me just what an amazing actor he was, especially in this period. He would also go on to be the guru in All of Me.
Oh yeah,
back in Bowl. I mean, so many great performances, but this is just one of his best. He's so incredibly funny as that lascivious South American dictator with the naked paintings and the talking hands. Just great stuff. All right, we have also more catalog titles from Olive. I'm going to go through these the same way that I went through the Kino ones. You got to know that these are out there. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. Kathy Bates in A Home of Our Own. Not such a terrific film, actually. This is from 1993. It kind of came and went. This is
I did the junket for that movie.
Tony Bill is such an unusual director. He never really his films are always solid, but never sort of great. And what was the junket like?
I remember. For one thing, Kathy Bates was sort of arcing Frankie and Johnny.
She was having her moment.
Yeah. And Fried Green Tomatoes. I think it might have been prior to. The one where
Misery?
Where she met the subject. Right. So she was sort of like having a moment. So it was interesting for her. She was always a wonderful person to talk to. Edward Furlong's in that movie too. It might have been his second movie after Terminator. He was the kid in Terminator 2. It might have been his second movie after that. So he was sort of like trying to prove his bona fides as an actual actor, as opposed to a kid that just got found.
Well, Kathy Bates is fine in it. She's sort of the only reason to see this. It's just a straight up family drama. She's a mother and widow, and just trying to sort of make her life and her family work. And Tony Bill, usually a good guy with actresses, and it's solid. It's just nothing remarkable. Stagecoach. This is really a weird kind of thing. This is Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson and Chris Christopherson along with John Schneider.
Is it a remake?
It is kind of a remake. It's a semi-remake. The 39 film, the John Ford classic from 1939 that sort of introduced John Wayne in grand form, and which also featured John Carradine, among many others. That was remade in 1966, and this kind of riffs on both of them. Doesn't do a very good job. It kind of tries to be interesting by adding Doc Holliday to the mix. Yeah. We got a little OK Corral wink and a nod here. It's okay. It's a little bit of a weird kind of anachronistic thing. Richard Harris is terrific in The Return of a Man Called Horse.
Wow. Yeah.
Man Called Horse, kind of the original. White guy goes native movie.
Exactly. Out there with the Indians and stuff. Yeah, this whole thing.
And it was so well received that they had him go native all over again. 1976 is a little bit late for this kind of a Western, but you know what? Let's put it this way. This did well enough in 1976 that its director, Irvin Kershner, got a little call from George Lucas a few years later and said, would you like to do a thing called Empire Strikes Back? And Irvin Kershner said, sure, why not? And he did a hell of a job. Still the best Star Wars movie ever. So that's Return of a Man Called Horse, which is a lot of fun. David Wolper's production of If It's Tuesday, This Must Be Belgium, which was made in 1969 and absolutely feels like it. This is, directed by Mel Stewart, who's really, really, really fun director. But man, does this really just absolutely feel like a wacky, strange movie from the late 60s.
It meant to have that sort of, what is it? Was it Catch-22? Alan Arkin and all this. It meant to have that sort of thing, but it just didn't,
You know what? The problem is there are a ton of these movies from the late 60s that are all about basically Austin Powers-y kinds of guys. Some of them are spies, some of them aren't, usually played by Peter Sellers. In this case, it's played by Ian McShane, who just cannot get enough of women. They just chase women around the whole time, and you have a lot of actresses who are wearing miniskirts and stewardess outfits, and at the end of the movie, somebody winks in the camera, and there's a little twinkle, and then you're supposed to... I mean, there literally are like 20 or 30 of these movies.
Yeah, you can't do anything in a movie today.
Did you get any of those in Africa?
No.
Didn't get any of these in Africa?
We got Benny Hill.
Oh, see, now there you
Yeah.
go. Isn't that funny? Benny Hill is the universal language.
I know.
Fantastic. So if it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium. Another one that is similar in that regard, I'll take Sweden with Bob Hope and Tuesday Weld, along with Frankie Avalon and Dina Merrill. If blondes have more fun, then Sweden's got to be the funniest place on earth.
Yeah. Because there are lots of blonde people there.
Yeah, gosh, some of these taglines. Anyway, this is kind of on the tail end of Bob Hope's movie career. 1965 is getting a little late, so they know that. That's why they have Dina Merrill and Frankie Avalon do some dancing.
Yeah.
So,
So make sure he's still hip with the kids. He's still,
oh
still
my
a hip
gosh,
cat.
yes. And then Appointment with Crime, William Hartnell and Robert Beatty. This is just a straight up noir, 1947. Kind of on the early edge of noir. Herbert Lom shows up in here, who's standard in a lot of these things. Not a remarkable noir, but a good solid noir. And then lastly, Cornbread, Earl, and Me.
Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man.
So-
Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah.
How old was he? He couldn't have been more than 14, 15 years old.
Had to be like 14 because
Apocalypse Now, he was 15.
Okay, so if he's 15 in Apocalypse Now, he's like 10 in here. Then,
Yeah.
10 or 11.
Yeah.
This is from 1974. Really, really hugely influential film. I mean, Tim, you had to have seen this when you were young.
I saw that movie when it came out. My
Yeah.
father took me to see that movie.
Yeah.
That's how influential that film is.
But it's not a blaxploitation
No,
film.
no
It's
way.
from the era, but it's a straight up drama.
Yeah, it's a drama set in the community, but there it is, a drama set in the community. Lawrence Fishburne could always act. He could always act.
Yeah.
His entire life, he was just a thespian. He's one of those guys.
Yeah, well, anyway, it's a really, really good film with some great performances. Moses Gunn is just magnificent in this movie. That's the thing I always remember, Moses Gunn in particular. Just a wonderful, wonderful presence. And Lawrence Fishburne, who is here referred to as Lawrence Fishburne III in the credits.
1975. That'd be about, Apocalypse Now was
79.
79. So, he'd have to be about 10 there. Yeah.
About 10 years old, just a kid. And of course, Antonio Fargas just brings it every time he shows up in a movie, and he was making Starsky and Hutch at time.
At that time, yeah.
So he was Huggy Bear on TV, and he's wonderful in this. So
Jamal Wilkes, the great forward for the
Lakers,
that great shooting forward, in this movie. It's don't get me started.
It's a fantastic film. All right, let's go into some other interesting Warner Blu-ray titles. Tim, share with us the.
I've got Victor Victoria over here, Julie Andrews and James Garner and Robert Preston. The thing that I love about this movie. When it came out, this would have been the late 70s or early 80s. With
80, what was this? 80.
Blake Edwards, something like late Blake Edwards,
like
movie.
82, 83, something like that.
And there's this. Obviously, you have a whole sort of transvestite. I guess they call them transvestite.
It's around the same time as E.T. It was around
all
that
stuff. So this is a Robert Preston film. Robert Preston, who still has a sort of classic era to him as an actor, sort of performing in this movie, and Julie Andrews, who could still sing like a bird. This is before she had that throat surgery that took her out of singing for several years. Absolutely fantastic. And, of course, you can't go wrong with Rockford. Rockford is in the movies. Anything on these, Wade? No,
nothing.
You got a feature-length audio commentary from Julie Andrews and Blake Edwards.
Yeah,
which is actually kind of nice. I appreciate.
That's the one. That's the one that has been around forever. That's a previously recorded one. That was because Blake Edwards is no longer with us.
Yeah.
And then others from the Warner line this week. It's interesting. The way they've split this up. We've got a couple that are from Warner Archive, the manufacturer on demand Blu-ray releases, and then a couple that are not, and they're all John Wayne movies. And I would love for somebody at Warner, if they're listening, to kind of explain to me what the rationale is for, because the two best films here, far and away, they were Expendable and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. Those are part of the Warner Archive release, which I would have expected would have gotten a big, screaming fanfare release to the world. These are two amazing, remarkable John Ford films, John Ford and John Wayne collaborations. I mean, these are legendary. She Wore a Yellow Ribbon is just magnificent. It's one of, it's part of the Cavalry trilogy along with Fort Apache and Rio Grande. And it's one of the great performances of John Wayne on film. And they were Expendable, one of the great John Wayne war movies. I mean, Robert Montgomery and Donna Reed. And then the other two that get the the usual regular Blu-ray treatment, McHugh with John Wayne.
I remember that movie, dude. What year was that again?
1974.
1974.
Yeah, same as Cornbread Earl and
my dad took me through that movie too.
See, and he's trying to be Dirty Harry here, except he's too old. John Sturges is trying to be the guy who directed the Dirty Dozen again, but he's too old. It's just McHugh is fine. It's a great movie for John Wayne, big fans, but he's not. He's not
Mr. Cogburn.
Yeah,
or even McClintock. Was it McClintock?
McClintock.
Yeah.
He's not Clint Eastwood, which is what he's trying to be at this time. He's trying to keep his career going.
Or
and then the other
Charlie Bronson, yeah.
The other one is Chisholm, which is not even remotely the film that She Wore a Yellow Ribbon is. This was directed by Andrew McLaughlin, who, of course, legendary Western director, does the commentary, and there's a little featurette on here as well. And I mean, it's perfectly fine. Chisholm is a popular, beloved film for a lot of John Wayne fans. Basically a story of a cattle king who's trying to hold it all together and fight off the usual land baron that they always have to deal with. But again, I don't know why those films were all divided between Warner Archive and Warner proper. Very strange.
You gave me a couple over here. I've got Return of the Killer Tomatoes, 1988. Return of the Killer Tomatoes. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, 1978. Interesting. A decade later, look, some people can make a career out of a theme. John DeBello here makes Attack of the Killer Tomatoes in 78. You hang around for 10 years. You know what I'm going to do? Make the other. I'll just make it again. I'll just make the same damn movie again, which is actually not that dumb. Full of all kinds of special edition contents here. It's a restoration from the original film. You've got interviews with Anthony Stark, an image gallery, all the stuff you could possibly think of. So, Return of the Killer Tomatoes. I wonder if you need to see the first one before you see this.
No,
one.
not really.
You think it'll
just see the first one instead.
Won't be able to follow. Suture, 1993. Very interesting.
Love this movie.
Dennis Haysbert. What does he sell? He sells car insurance or something. What is it?
Yeah.
Is he the Geico guy? What is he? He's somebody.
He does
Allstate.
Yeah,
Allstate. He's the Allstate. That's Dennis Haysbert, folks. So this is 1993.
And the president from 24.
And the president from 24 actually nominated for an Oscar, I think, for Love Phil, opposite Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh, he made. I'm not sure he got a nomination.
Was he not nominated for that? No, she got nominated.
She got nominated.
She got nominated for that.
Yeah.
He probably should have been.
Yeah.
So this is a very, very interesting film. Black and White, 1993. Very small film. It's about these two brothers who don't know each other, one rich, one poor. Now, for those of us watching the film, we can plainly see that one is white and Dennis is black. Mm-hmm. This is not something that is acknowledged inside the context of the film.
Never.
One of them decides to try to kill the other one in order to, because it's mentioned that they look alike, which of course is a conceit, again, that draws you into the film. It's a very, very interesting thing that's going on. It's a thriller, but it's really not about the thing that's going on in the thriller. It's really about racial identity and perception and all that kind of stuff. Very, very sharp film, plus a really, really great early performance from Dennis Haysbert. Special edition DVD here contains both the DVD and the Blu-ray, all kinds of commentaries, including one monitored by Steven Soderbergh here. So, good stuff.
Yes. And then, do we dare talk about this?
Do you know about that movie?
I do, unfortunately.
The Swinging Cheerleader. Jack Hill. It's a Jack Hill film.
It's Jack Hill. Jack Hill, one of the great classic exploitation direct Coffee. Made a lot of great exploitation films. The Swinging Cheerleaders is not one of them, really. This is from Arrow, and they just blew this out, I'm sure, because it has a huge cult following. But The Swinging Cheerleaders is, this may come as a shock, but this movie is about swinging cheerleaders. Is that... I don't want the title to deceive you.
Special features.
Yeah, there's a whole undercover thing here. This young journalist who goes undercover as a cheerleader at the college.
It's one of those you can't make. You can't make this.
Yeah,
you cannot do this.
You can't.
The only drive you out of the country.
The only reason this is out is because Quentin Tarantino loves this, and they resurrected this film for the Tarantino Film Fest some years ago. And it's just really campy and silly, and
it's about boobies. It's all about.
That's
boobies.
all it is. Yeah, boobies. It even includes a reversible sleeve featuring the original artwork So if that's a real lure to you, anyway, an audio commentary with Jack Hill, which was exclusively recorded for this release.
And we're talking crap, but I'm a big fan of Jack Hill.
You know what? Listening to Jack Hill is actually better than watching the movie. I'll tell you, it really is. He knows his stuff. And all right, and then let's. So I'm going to wrap out here with the latest Twilight Time releases, which are rather amazing. There's a lot of incredible stuff here, and it just always amazes me that the studios let these things go. The first one is Inserts with Richard Dreyfuss, which is a complete and total cult film from the early '70s, just before Jaws, which people have forgotten about. Have you guys seen Inserts?
Not in years.
This is such an interesting movie. It's kind of in that, there were a lot. The fact that porn was becoming kind of a mainstream thing in the early '70s.
They talk about it a little bit in Boogie Nights. There was this idea by a few guys that you could do something.
And porn is becoming kind of a thing, right, in the early '70s. And so you get movies like Hardcore with
like Kansas,
yeah,
Sissy Spacek,
where they're sort of wrestling with this and how society is going to absorb this. And Dreyfuss basically plays a guy who's reduced to making porn films. And, he never leaves the house, and along comes Bob Hoskins with his girlfriend who wants to be an actress, and it gets real creepy.
I forgot Bob Hoskins was in that movie.
Bob Hoskins? Yeah. It's creepy.
Behind the Green Door, I think, pushed a lot of that from
it did.
That
sure did. Al Pacino in one of his best ever performances, The Panic in Needle Park. Yeah. Such an amazing movie. Really, really tough, gritty, 1971. He just on the cusp of The Godfather, just coming off of some of his first really, really good notices. Twilight Time, really, they just got a gold one with this. They really, really did. Jerry Schatzberg shot this. Joan Didion co-wrote the screenplay. And it's just, it is an absolutely wonderful look. I mean, I shouldn't even say wonderful. It is a gritty, but yet somehow affecting look at addiction and love.
It had that sort of sense of verite that those films, Midnight Cowboy.
Very much so.
I mean, these were films, but they had this sort of sense of verite that was very, very prevalent at the time.
Rollerball, which I don't even need to give you any introduction to Rollerball. Norman Jewison directed Rollerball in 1975, right after he made Fiddler on the Roof. The two films have a great deal in common. No, actually, I take that back. They don't have anything in common. Although I'm sure there are probably a couple of Jewish guys playing Rollerball at some point, but I can't imagine.
They remade that too in the 90s.
They did. It was terrible. Terrible.
Jimmy
Yeah. I mean, basically futuristic roller derby, and people die, and it's creepy and weird. And it's supposed to kind of have a Logan's Run vibe to it in some way too, I'm sure. Yeah. Or like Future World and Westworld. Wasn't that the early '70s were loaded with the future is going to be horrible and scary movies?
And they got a Westworld HBO series that's queued up for the fall. Believe it or not, all of that stuff it's coming back around.
It's coming back. Soylent Green. Yeah, makes me hungry.
You know what it is?
What?
It's people.
Did you get that in Africa?
Yes.
You did. Okay.
Soylent Green was
we
people.
made Soylent Green.
Oh, that's brilliant. And then we've got The Hound of the Baskervilles, which is one of a half dozen times that this thing has been made for the movies. This is the one with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, and it's pretty great. This was a Hammer production from 1959, I think this was. Anyway, this is a really, really great Hammer production.
Who's your favorite Sherlock? Mine's his name was Jeremy something. He was a heroin actor. He had that series that Sherlock. He played Sherlock in that series. Probably late '90s or so. What was his name?
You
know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Right? Well, you're. See, I'm drawing.
It's drawing my brain too.
You're talking about the Sherlock Holmes stuff, the British stuff.
The British,
which why am I drawing a blank on his
name?
Me
too, but he's so.
Well, that's the actor who played Freddie Eynsford Hill in My Fair Lady.
Exactly.
And went on to play Sherlock Holmes rather amazingly when he aged into it a little bit.
Fortunately, he was actually a drug addict himself, so took it a little too seriously.
Yeah. And then the Member of the Wedding. This is another Twilight Time title from the Columbia Library. This thing is loaded. This is from 1952. A Stanley Kramer film that is produced by Stanley Kramer and directed by Fred Zinnemann. and both giants of their era, and really an unusually much more restrained film for Zinnemann, who's already very restrained. Did things, obviously Zinnemann did Man for All Seasons and High Noon, and Kramer as a producer was responsible for Judgment at Nuremberg and Exodus and a lot of other films that were really, really overwrought and very messagey and preachy. This is an interesting combination of the two of them. This is a beautiful, restrained, poetic story. Really, 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 really very sensitive. Based on a Carson McCullers play, which was adapted from her own novel, and it stars Julie Harris as this tomboy who is, just sort of trying to make do in, with life and challenges in life, and it's actually really quite beautiful. Terrific Alex North score that was, is you can get as an isolated track on this.
Jeremy Brett, thank you.
Jeremy
Brett. That took a minute, but whatever.
Freddie Eynsford Hill on in My Fair Lady, and then becomes Sherlock Holmes. And then the last one here is Romeo is Bleeding. Have either of you seen Romeo is Bleeding?
Yeah, are you kidding me? Lena Olin. We're talking
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman, man, that was a completely wild movie.
Now, Nadim, do you remember? You would have known some of the connective tissue with this to me. Do you know how this film connects to me and to my wife?
No.
You don't. You don't know this story.
No.
Tim, do you know this story?
You probably have told me.
Okay, so I'm going to. Well, it's not directly connected to the film. It's connected to a different film, but through a different film. But I will fill you in a moment. In any case, Peter Medak directed this. Peter Medak, of course, who did Love at First Bite, Let Him Have It, a lot of other amazing films. Really extraordinary career. I love Peter Medak as a director. Really eclectic director. This is from 1993. And it is a noir that features probably the most terrifying femme fatale in noir history. Gary Oldman is essentially an impotent male lead in this. Lena Olin is a villainous psychopath who does things to herself that are so sadistic and horrifying just so that she can get away with anything. It will blow your mind. She would make the Terminator T-1000 run the other way. That's how scary Lena Olin is in this movie. She is absolutely wonderful. She's just off the chart crazy.
As I look at I saw this movie in '93. I think I did the junket for this movie.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at these names. Tony Sciarrocco. People will know him from The Sopranos.
Yeah.
You got Annabella Sciorra in this movie. You got James Cromwell in this movie. You got Michael Wincott in this movie. These are all names people listening will know.
For sure.
You got Will Patton in this movie. I'm working my way up from the bottom of the cast list here to Juliette Lewis in this movie, Lena Olin and Gary.
So
these are the people they were way down the bill in this movie.
Okay, so here's the deal. The characters are named Jack and Mona. My wife was the post-production accountant on the film Murder in the First.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Murder in the First with Kevin Bacon as the guy sentenced to death and the whole thing. In Murder in the First, there are a couple of canaries. There are a couple of birds in a cage in the movie. No one wanted those birds when Murder in the First finished shooting, so they were sitting in the accounting office for the longest time. And my wife inherited them at the time, before she was my wife, and named them Jack and Mona after these characters. So for many years while we were dating, I was exposed to Jack and Mona, the birds, who were eventually eaten by her dog.